Okay, everyone. So in this last video, we're going to be going through the next two problems of part of this file. So again, this took a bit, but we went ahead and set up our orders. So now we're going to jump into this order manager. And this is going to be a class that manages multiple orders. There's doc strings here and the screenshots of the behavior. And we'll see here that the constructor takes in the file name used by the application for part trees. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and create a constructor variable called filename, self.filename, and to set it equal to that file name that we're working with here. Now, after we go ahead and do that, we need to kind of think about what's going on here. We'll see here that in our manager, when we say manager.get all event names, we have these two brackets on either side. And again, what is that a telltale sign of us? Tells us that it's going to be a list. So if we have a list here, what we should really do is go ahead and create a list object inside of our constructor that is going to hold all of these orders. Because as you can see here, we have this add order functionality, get orders, and so forth, and they can hold these orders. So essentially, we can say something like order list and set it equal to an empty list. And then we could say holds all orders in a list object. And what this means is that we're going to be able to iterate through it. Now, if we have this pretty easy looking order list now, it's pretty straightforward for us to go ahead and add orders into it. Self.orderList, and then we can .append the order into it. Get orders total. Well, what do we know about this order list? Well, it's a list. So what can we do for a list? We can say for order in self.orderList. And now I saw a few folks, and this is where we kind of struggled. Do I go ahead and say self.order here? Do I say self.order down here? You don't want to do that because order is a variable that only exists within the context of this for loop. It doesn't exist outside of the scope of any thing going on here. So because it's existing within this context, all we need to say is order. And what do we know for sure is each object in this list? Well, every one of these objects in this list should be an order object. And because of they're an order object, when I iterate through this list, I'm going to have access to every single one of these orders classes up here. So what I can do now is after I go ahead and I say for order in self.orderList, I can create a new variable called total sum. Maybe I'll set it equal to 0. And then I could say total sum plus equals order dot calculate total. And again, we double checked in the last video that this was working correctly. So now we can assure ourselves that that's working. After we go ahead and we say dot order calculate total, I can go ahead and just return my total sum. How do I get the count of the orders? Well, you could iterate through all the lists, but remember we have a list here. So what we can simply do is self dot, and also, sorry, up here, we're going to need to return true if we add something. I just remembered that. Sorry about that. It would just still ran if we didn't have this, but it's just nice to notice. And then returns the count of how many orders there are. But what we can do is just simply return the length of the order list that we're working with. Now returns the average cost of the orders, returns 0 if there are no orders. So if there's no orders inside of this list here, what we can say is if length of the self.orderList is equal to 0, we can return a 0. Else, we are going to say what's the average cost of all of these orders? Well, we can go ahead and create a variable, maybe average, or maybe we can create another one called total. I'm going to grab my variable from up here. I'm going to iterate through my entire order list, and I'm going to calculate each of these sums here. And then what I need to do again, the variable of the, calculating the average is adding up everything and then dividing by how many items are in there. So we can simply return the total sum divided by the length of self.orderList. And please remember that every time you're referencing order list, you're going to need to use the keyword self in front of it to make sure that you're referencing the attribute that we created up here. Awesome. So after we go ahead and we created this order list, what we get here is gets a list of all the names, gets a list of the names of all the orders. So what we can do here, if we're going to return a list here, we can, and let me open up the stock string. If there are no orders, the list should be empty. We could go ahead and say name list, something like this is equal to an empty list. And then we could say for order in self.orderList, namelist.append, and what are we going to append into this name list? The order.getName. And where am I getting this get name from? Well, this get name is coming from up here, which returns my self.name. And because each of these items in this list is in order, it will go ahead and return my order. Now we've done quite a bit of work, so let's go ahead and try to run a bit of this. I'm going to return my name list after doing this. And I'm also going to very quickly, for ease on my end, I'm going to go ahead and create these order objects really quick. I'm going to copy this one from up here. And what I'll do here, O1 is equal to order breakfast. Let's do 12/13/2021. And then what is that? 20, 10, and then 0.25. Going to go ahead and do this for the remainder of them as well. This one is lunch. I'll make this the next day. 25. 30. And then 0.10. And then for my next one as dinner, change this one so 2 to 3. Dinner 12/15, and then this is going to be 30, 15, 0.10. Cool, and I have an extra 10 up here. Okay, so this should go ahead and run all these orders whenever I create my file. And now I can say, after I did that, I'm going to say o1.calculate total. Okay, and let me do o2.calculate total. And then O3, and if you press tab after you hit your dot, that will bring up that context menu. Okay, so I got 495, and I'm going to say manager is equal to order manager, like so, and then I can say manager.add order O1. Okay, I get my true back. We get that guy as O2. I get this guy as O3. So I get all these guys as true, and let's see if we can get the orders total. 1570 looks pretty good. Get count of orders. This should just return to length. Great. Manager.get average cost. What should this return? 523.3 repeating. Great. Now let me try the last one. Manager.get all event names. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Cool. So again, this is working pretty well. And the last one that we need to look at is get most expensive order. Gets the order with the highest total, returns none if there are no orders. So if there's going to be no orders, that means that our list is going to be empty. So I'm going to say if length of list is 0, I'm going to return none because there's nothing there. Else, otherwise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate through my order list here. And inside of my order list, well, now this is a pretty basic algorithm that you'll use quite a bit. Essentially, what you need to do is whenever you're looking for max order or anything, you can set that order to be nil. Or empty, essentially. In this scenario, I'll just set the max order to be 0. And one more, or I won't put it as 0. What I'm going to put it as in this scenario is the first order in the list. Because I want to return the max order. So what I can do now here is I can essentially say, hey, in every order of my list, if the current order that I am on, so if order.calculate cost, that's what we called it, right? Calculate total, excuse me. If order.calculate total is greater than the max orders.calculate total, so essentially if there's a more expensive recipe than my last one, I'm going to say max order is equal to this order. And then what can I do after that? I'm going to loop through all of these guys here, and then I can just return the max order. So this is one way you could do that. You could also do this by using indexes and then flipping through it. I'll go ahead and show everyone. What's it, AZ? Forgot my... Oh, I forgot my if statement there. Sorry. Now let's go ahead and try to add these guys back in there again. These guys are added, and what I can say now is L is equal to manager.get most expensive order. And let's see here, method and float. Whoops, I forgot my 2 parentheses after that. So when you forget these 2 parentheses here, that's going to be a method call. And or it's going to give me the method address, and we don't want that. We just want to make sure we're getting the proper order. So I'm going to add in my manager, this guy, and then I'm going to say my L is equal to the most expensive order. If I type in L, great, I get my lunch. So this is looking pretty good. And now we need to look at this scenario as, okay, how do I go ahead and get this for loop to work? So you might be thinking, okay, well, can I just do it right now? For order in manager, and again, manager isn't an order, it's an order manager. I'm going to print out the order.getDate. And we might run into this error. Type error, iter return non-iterator of type none type. So there's a few things to unpack here. The main being is that whenever you make a for loop and you put a variable on it, that variable is going to look for an iter method inside of it, essentially. It's like, hey, what am I iterating through here? And in this scenario, what do we know is true about the code that we've just written? Well, all of it is relying on this self.order list that holds all the orders in a list object. And so essentially what we can say is, hey, whenever an order manager object is put into a for loop like it is here, it's going to call the iter, it's going to call its iteration method, iter method, and we should return something from that method. And what should we return? Well, we could try to just return that self.order list that we made earlier. So we're going to say, hey, go ahead and return the self.order list. And if this doesn't work, there'll be one more thing we can do here. Let's go ahead and check if this does work, though. And I'm going to do this. And we'll see here that I get the return non-iterator of type list. And it's interesting, right? It's like we always think that list is iterator. But what we need to return here is the conversion of our list that is a part of our class into an iterator object. And we do that by typing iter in front of it and then surrounding it in those quotes. And now if I run this one more time, you can see now I get all these, and this works for every single one of these events. So what happens here is when I call for order in manager, it's going to say, okay, manager, what is manager? Manager is an order manager. Okay, so I'm in here. I'm in my this class here. Now I have a for loop, so I need to iterate through it. What does my order manager want to do when I iterate? Oh, okay, I'm in my iter. Oh, okay, it wants me to iterate on a self.order list. So I'm going to go through it. And what do we know is inside of each self.order list? We know that it's the orders themselves. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and so forth. Great. So that is problem 2. Excellent. And now we can quickly look at this part 3 as well, which is where we go ahead and we have these methods called load orders and write orders to this order manager class. So we're going to need the file name pass in, which we do already. We have self.filename. And then we're going to look at a few of the pieces of data that's going on in here. So let me go ahead and just pull up one more thing here. We have our inventory class that goes ahead and it has all these pieces of data inside of it. And now what we could see here, create a new instance of the manager and load contents into memory. So whenever we create a new manager loader, we can go ahead and call this load orders method. So let's go ahead and try to take a look at that one. Let's see here. This is my one, right? There we go. Now we can see here, read the order information from the file. You should clear out any orders that are in the manager before you load. Returns true if successful and false if there is an error. Okay, so whatever we can, if we want to clear out any orders that are already in the manager before we load it, what we could say here is we could say self.orderList is equal to an empty list, so that will clear our information. And then we could say try after we do that. And in fact, you know what? I'm going to put this inside of my try statement here, just in case. And then what I could say here is I'm going to go ahead and open my self.filename that I had from above. That's my constructor. And I'm going to read it in. And again, self.filename is from up here, which is given as a default parameter. Now I'm going to read it in. And then what we could say here is I'm going to print out, let me say content is equal to file. And let me go ahead and try out read lines really quick. And I'm just going to print out content. And then I'm just going to simply do an except. And I'll just print out an error if there is an exception. Cool. So now what I'll do here is I'll say manager2 is equal to order manager. And then I'll say manager2 load orders. And now we can see here, okay, it's looking decent, but what's happening is that I'm only printing out just the individual lines here. So what I would need to do here is essentially use the split method that we did last time with the comma, but instead of using a comma, what do I need to split with? You can see here that I have these colons here. So what I'm going to do is in each iteration of my for loop, after I find my content, I'll say for order in content, I'm going to say line, or I could say order is equal to order.split. And what am I going to split by? This colon. And then let me just print out order for all of us now. Let's just see what this looks like. Great. And now it looks like we have enough information here to go ahead and actually make this into an order that we can create and append into a new list that we have. So now what I could say here is I can go ahead and, very similar to what we did for the process patients, I could say name is equal to order of index 0. And where am I getting order of index 0 at? Well, we just saw there order of index 0, the name is at 0, the date's at index 1. This is at index 2, this is at index 3, and this is at index 4. So what I could say here is date is at order of 1. And now one more thing that we need to make sure that we do is when we pass this information into a constructor, we need to remember that if we were providing something, these get the default parameters get replaced. And we need to remember that if we are doing that, we need to make sure that we have type set correctly, because look what is happening here. I'll show us an example of what happens if we don't do proper typesetting. After we go ahead, let me get the cost per person, which is going to be equal to order 2. And then I believe it's guest is equal to order of tree. And then the last one was tax rate is equal to order 4. Now what I could say here is, okay, let me go ahead and say self, or I can make a new order. New order is equal to order. And what is this order going to take in? Well, the name, date, cost per person, guest, and tax rate that I just found. Then I can say self.orderList.append this new order that I just created here. Except I'm going to get an error if that doesn't happen. And then if this all runs out true, I believe it wants us to return true here, if this is all working out, right? Yep, so after, if you could see right here, I have a blue true right there. So after I say that, I could say return true. And after I say return true, it should work all right. Now let me go ahead and try to run this code really quick. We get my order manager. I'm going to load in my orders. Okay, get those. It looks true. That's pretty good. And now what I can say here is for order in manager 2, let me print the string of order. Okay, this looks pretty good. It seems to be working. But what happens if I want to get manager2.get orders total? Uh-oh, what's happening here? So I get this weird type error. Can't multiply sequence by non-int of type string. And what's going on? Tax amount is equal to self.guess times self.tax rate, self.cost per person. That's weird because earlier we saw that it was working just fine, right? When I made my order, I was able to calculate it just fine. What's happening is that because right here we're reading in from a file, every single one of these indexes is a string. And because they're strings, when you try to use manipulation on them, after you pass them in, this is a string, this is a string, and this is a string, they're going to be messed up here. So we can't calculate strings like this. So what we need to do, and you can either do this indem method up there, or I think it's easier just to do it down here. The cost per person could probably most likely be a float. The guess is most likely going to be an int because there's probably not going to be like half people there. And then the float is going to be the tax rate. And now if I go ahead and I try to redo this code one more time, we'll see that fixes up my error just fine. And let me try to do this one. Great, I get the total. Awesome. Now there's one more little thing that we need to do here, which is where we are going to write all the orders to the file where we're writing it. And essentially with this one, we're going to pretty much do the inverse of what is here. I'm going to go ahead and say try file is equal to open. And what file am I going to open? Well, that self.file name that I had earlier, which is defined in the upper body there. And I'll say W because I'm writing to the file. And what am I writing? I need to write all of my orders. So I could say for order in self.orderList, like so. I could say file.write And what am I going to write into this file? Well, I want to write the entire order. So I could say file.write. And because the orders get printed out like so, or like here, string of order, I can just grab up this guy right here. I can write the string representation of the order that I'm currently on. And then if everything works out fine, I should return a true. Otherwise, I could say error, except print error. Cool. Now, to go ahead and test this, what we need to do is we're going to make another manager. We're going to load in these orders here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an order of test 22, 23, 100, 100.10. And now I return true there. That looks pretty good. And then manager2 dot get orders total should be 1200 or so. Great. And then I'm going to say manager2 dot write orders to file. I get a true there, so something good must have happened. If I open up my, oops, this was open. Let's see if it did anything different. We'll see here I have a new timestamp, and oops, I didn't have these separated by a new line, so let me quickly fix this. After I go ahead and write my string, what I can do is I can just add a new line character like so, which essentially makes a space. And if I go ahead and try to reload this one more time, load in my orders, I'm going to add in a new one, and then write it. Close this guy real quick. Great. Oh, it seems like they were overwritten each time. But essentially, let me just add a space here so we can all see it. The new line's not the end of the world there. Oh, I messed up the... that's why. I have my text file different now. But essentially, because I overwrote it, it's going to keep just using the one order. I'll say I did this on purpose, but it does look like my code is functioning correctly. You might just need to fiddle around a bit with the new line there. Awesome, everyone. So I do know this was a very long one compared with the other one, too. There's a lot going on in here, but please make sure to review these. There's a lot of inner workings, but the more you practice with these, the better you'll become with them. And if you have any more questions, please let me know. All right, thank you, everyone.